Welcome everyone to day 2 of World Blitz 2023. We have the former World Blitz Champion MVL taking on Magnus Carlsen. MVL arrives early, puts his jacket on the chair, takes his seat there, and as he starts to adjust his pieces, he looks at someone, calls him, and then covers the camera. Some inside joke there. Magnus Carlsen arrives, shakes hands there. It's an important game because you want to start off day 2 well. Magnus takes a sip of water and he'll now adjust his pieces. That's what he always does. That's his routine. And now the players are ready to take on each other. But before that, they have some jokes to crack about what happened against Nepo and Dubov.
No, tell me it's a record. With 26 subjects.
I was thinking about the one with
more pieces.
Yeah.
With bishop h. Yeah, we make your job easier.
So those were very interesting jokes. And we have Alina Dvoretskaya, the CEO advisor of Freedom Holding, making the first move. And there she makes the first move for the players. Freedom Holding has been supporting these tournaments, as you can see, as a sponsor, and that's why she's there. And now the game is about to begin. Let's get it cracking. MVL with the white pieces plays 1e4. Magnus plays the Sicilian. Knight c6, and MVL pauses for a bit because he can play the Rosolimo if he wants, but he decides to play the open Sicilian. Takes, pawn takes, and the knight comes out. White also develops the knight. We have the Sveshnikov on the board. Knight to b5. Magnus pushes his pawn, and now bishop g5 used to be played a lot, but these days knight d5 is in the rage. Takes, and knight comes back. Now the main move here is c4. That's played in many games. But MVL pauses once again for a few seconds and plays a4, which is quite logical because when the knight is pushed away, you want to play the knight back and then use your pawns to expand on the queen side. That's where black has the majority. You can see that Magnus is not very well prepared, so he pauses for a bit to know what will he do exactly. He brings his knight out to g6, and MVL now can develop his bishops, bishop e2, bishop e3. It's normal position, but he makes a tricky move, a5. It's very important to kick the knight away, but Magnus makes an error as early as move 10, bishop e3. What a powerful move. You can see both the pieces attacking here, and if you push the pawn, there's bishop b6 attacking the queen, and then knight c7. Look at Magnus's face. He's so upset that he's made this opening error. Very uncanny. And that does not happen with Magnus often. He's just lost a pawn, which is very difficult now to recover. He castles it out and hopes that MVL takes this with a knight so that he can get his bishop out and gain some time. But MVL now takes with the bishop because he can gain a tempo with bishop b6 at the right time. Bishop d7, he comes back with the bishop. And now queen comes to c8. In this position, if you look carefully, white is a pawn up. But black has some compensation with pawn running down. White can play the bishop up and try to castle. But there's also a very powerful move. Let's see if MVL can find it. You see the queen here is very weirdly positioned. So if in case you can find a way to attack it, that would be something. You can see MVL is about to make his move. He's at 2 minutes on the clock. Magnus has 2 minutes 20 seconds. And he plays it. What a beautiful move. He wants to go rook c3 and attack the queen, and if the queen moves, knight c7 and trap the rook. Magnus knows the power of this move, and look at these squares. They are all covered beautifully. What a nice move, rook a3. It's like you have the advantage, but you want a winning position. You're turning the screws. Magnus takes, bishop takes, and wants to trade off one of the bishops. Well, generally when you're material down, you don't want to trade pieces, but here Magnus is doing that because white not only has the material edge, but also is completely better positionally. So he tries to trade, MVL takes it, and if you take with the queen, I would protect my pawn with queen d2. So he takes with the rook, and now important to play c4, b4 here, stopping queen from coming here, but an inaccuracy by MVL. And now can Magnus find queen c5 because it hits the bishop, the pawn, and also this pawn. Yes, he finds it. Pawn comes forward, and now if queen d2 is there, white is in control. But look at this move by Magnus, attacking b2, attacking a5. All of a sudden he's got counterplay. You can see Magnus's body language is changing. He's feeling that he's back in the game. And also look at the time. Even though Magnus made a mistake in the opening, he's still 30 seconds ahead on the clock. That's what Magnus does. Now MVL slides his queen to the side of the board to defend both b2 and a5. But the knight jumps in. It wants to give a check and then move to the central square. So he stops it with rook e1. Magnus goes in queen d2. In fact, knight d5 would have been much better to get back the pawn. But queen d2 is such a tempting move because you want to give a check and go here. Meanwhile, the queen keeps an eye here, also on the a5 pawn. Which is the white piece that's not playing in the game? It's the king. If you play king f1 to stop knight e2 and he finds it, that's an amazing move. That's an excellent move. Also, knight d3 is impossible because rook e2 wins material. So, king f1 is such a classy move by MVL. To find it under pressure is not easy, but you can bank on MVL to find these moves. After all, he's one of the best blitz players in the world. e4 is a mistake. Can MVL find queen c1 to trade queens off? Yes, he does again. The queen cannot move away because the knight would be hanging. And so Magnus takes, rook takes, knight d3. Now c1 and b2 are hanging. You can defend it with rook c2 or rook b1. But MVL chops off the exchange. What an intuitive decision. MVL literally feels that this queenside pawn phalanx with the bishop is giving him a winning position. And he made this decision in a matter of seconds. That's the understanding these players have. Rook takes d3, and now white has two pawns and a bishop, but more importantly, black has no counterplay. Look at this bishop controlling the open file square on e8. That's why Magnus plays rook e7. He doesn't want the king to come into the game. But MVL knows what's to be done next. He needs this king into the game, and he would do that even if it meant exchanging the rooks. I'm sure he'll go rook e3 to make way for the king to come up on the board. Yes, he does. Rook e3, fantastic move. And now, if the king can come nicely into the central square, you can start pushing your pawns. That's what he does. King comes in. Magnus is suffocated here. He doesn't have space. He needs to get some play rolling. That's why he has pushed his f-pawn. Takes the rook. MVL takes back with the pawn. King comes to the queen side, hoping that it can save something here or create some play here with f4. But look at white pawns. They are moving, and Magnus gets really desperate, pushes his pawn to f4. Well, one of the ways is just to take and push your pawn to e4 and then e5 coming in next. MVL pushes it directly. He pushes his pawn to e4. Big threat now. Take on d6, pawn pushing to e5. Magnus is completely busted. Only thing that can help him is his time. He has 50 seconds while MVL is down to 15 seconds. Somehow, even though MVL has low time, the way he's playing, the confidence with which he's making his moves, makes one believe that he's not going to blunder here. Meanwhile, Magnus seems a bit hopeless in this position. He pushes his pawn, and now MVL takes it. Rook f4. The idea is to pin this pawn so that after cd6 there's no e5. MVL, look at your time. You're down to 9 seconds. You need to make a move. Come on, he pushes his a pawn. Magnus takes it. Bishop takes. Happens. Pawn comes up to g5. And now b pawn pushes forward. Whoa. Look at that. The pawn is going here. Magnus pushes his g pawn down the board, and MVL simply ignores it. He pushes his b pawn. He has full faith in his b pawn. But has Magnus gotten some counterplay here with pawn takes pawn, and then he has his own passer? Well, the good news for First check, king takes, pawn takes pawn. MVL's good news is that his bishop controls the queening square. So pawn check, king comes to d7, another check, king comes up, and now check here. King comes up, and the B and the D pawns are going to end the game. D pawn pushes forward, 2 pawns on the 7th rank. And now black also has a pawn on the 7th rank, but the bishop's going to sacrifice itself for the pawn. Meanwhile, the king is coming up to shepherd one of the pawns to the queening square. Magnus tries a last-ditch attempt, and the bishop comes back. It's game over here. Magnus Carlsen resigns. What a game by MVL. Magnus made one error and he latched onto it like a boss.